Hello and welcome to the Shelf Examination Podcast, where we examine items found on the shelves of our local library. My name's Joe. I'm the Makerspace Director at the libraries in Southern Utah.
And I'm Sarah. I'm the reference librarian of books, technology, and all things nerdy here at the Hurricane Branch of Southern Utah.
And you are definitely the authority. That's why I brought you in on this one, because you are the one to talk to about this stuff. So, Sarah, we are continuing our discussion, our Kaiju review.
Kaiju review.
And we are doing today what we have decided is the second major Kaiju movie, Godzilla from 1954.
And a lot of people consider it the first Kaiju movie because it's the first giant monster movie out of Japan.
Right.
And the term Kaiju, giant monster,
is Japanese.
But
fair enough.
I really think that King Kong kind of laid the foundation for it.
Well, and I know there have been interviews and whatnot where the people who made Godzilla were definitely inspired by King Kong. We need to mention that King Kong was released in 1933. Godzilla was released in 1954. In 1933, when King Kong was released, it was an international success.
Oh, yeah, it was huge.
It was huge all over the world. And a bunch of kids watched it and were inspired by it and grew up. And then 20 years later, they were like, we want to make these movies.
You had to get through financial crises. You had to get through World War II,
right,
where, the filmmaking was more propaganda and let's be happy because there was enough real-life monsters in the world. So we had things like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, rather than...
Gulliver's Travels from Fleischer Studios, all kinds of stuff like
rather than giant monsters wreaking havoc.
Which, by the way, listener, if you haven't seen Gulliver's Travels from Fleischer Studios, you should try, contrast it with Snow White. It's kind of a mind blow. It's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
So King Kong came out before home video, before TVs were in people's homes,
before reruns.
The only way that people saw it was when the movie theaters decided to run it. And for sure, they ran it in 1933, and they ran it several times after that point. People would come back to the theaters, but eventually people stopped watching it.
And then it wasn't released again until the 50s.
Until the 50s. And then in the 50s, all these parents have been talking to their kids about this. Oh, there was this one great movie. I wish you guys could watch it.
And it climbed the building, and the girl was screaming.
Yes.
And the airplane zooming.
And so they re-released it in the 50s and inspired a new generation. And at this time,
the movie
studios were like, let's not miss out on this. Let's start making some more giant monster movies.
We don't have a big world war looming. We don't have this problem and this problem, so let's do it.
Now, it should be mentioned, footnote, there were two King Kong knockoffs in China and Korea, respectively.
And
they are, at this time...
for all accounts, terrible.
Well, and they are lost media at this time. So
there are some stills out there, and from all accounts, we're not sad it's lost, other than for historical purposes.
I heard a statistic that said that something like 60% of the movies that were released before some year have been completely lost to time.
Well, the celluloid just deteriorates, and no matter how well you store it, it will continue to do that, which is why there are whole foundations and charities of people who are restoring these things before they are lost.
But I'll tell you the truth, if we lost 60% of the movies that came out this year, I wouldn't necessarily cry.
Tell us how you really feel.
Oh, my goodness. So, talking about Godzilla. Now, Godzilla is a different beast from King Kong. I'm going to own that one. But especially for us because it's a Japanese movie. The native language of it is not our native language. So I want to ask, are you team sub or team dub?
I am team either.
Yeah?
Because I'm one of those fortunate few that can read fast enough that it doesn't bother me. And I also grew up reading a lot of subtitles. It was just something I did. But I know my husband can't read fast enough, so he ends up having to watch the movie twice if it's not available dubbed. He has to watch it once for the story because he's reading it, and then once for the movie. Yeah,
and I remember when I was younger, I used to watch subtitled movies without a hitch. It didn't bother me. It didn't slow me down at all. But now that I'm getting older, I think my brain's slowing down a little bit, and I feel like I just can't. I feel like I'm reading a book while I'm watching a movie. I'm splitting my attention here.
It never bothered me. Well, my dad was mostly deaf, so we always had the closed captions on, so it never bothers me. But watching it as a kid, I saw it dubbed. I saw it on like TBS. And
You
it was
probably
the
actually
short
saw,
version.
the Americanized version
Yeah.
of it. So there was a version of this movie back when it was released that they recut, re-edited, and actually changed some parts for American audiences. They
added a whole character.
They added a whole character, split it in there, and kind of did it Saban Power Rangers style,
Yeah,
where
it was terrible.
we've got the American dude in the foreground, and then we switch to the native footage in Japanese and switch back to
And
it
it's
was,
just, hi, I am here doing reporting on this because obviously America would have a reporter here. So
I mean, why not? Why not? But it was very interesting. I know that I have seen that version, but I did not see that version on this rewatch.
yeah, we don't have that version here because has been edited a lot, not just for content to add that person in, but they've edited it to shorten it.
This actually brings me to my next point. When I was a kid, people used to tell me that Godzilla was a allegory for the nuke, and I thought that meant that this movie was basically retelling the bombing of Japan,
Which is completely
with
not
a
right.
giant monster
Yeah.
instead of
I can
the
imagine
bomb.
hearing that where you would get that idea.
Yeah, and maybe other people have that idea as well, but
it's not.
It's not, because in this movie, that bombing did happen.
It did. It's completely. They talk about it. They talk about
Yep.
the H-bomb testing, and that's the catalyst for Godzilla.
Exactly. Godzilla is not the nuke. Godzilla
is the reaction.
is the monster that the nuke unleashed
Yeah.
onto the world, both figuratively and in the world of this movie, literally.
And so I think a lot of the subtext to this story is, okay, the cat is out of the bag.
Right, and we cannot go back.
We cannot go back. The science is there.
Yeah.
One of the characters, the eye patch, it starts with an S.
Shirazawa.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
He does
have notes.
invent, cheater. He does invent the weapon, the
Yeah,
major.
the oxygen bomb. I love
Yes.
that.
That will play off of the hydrogen bomb.
Exactly.
Anyway, but it does. He says, "Look, I've got this science
Yeah.
that I didn't invent for a purpose of being a weapon. I was studying something else, and this was something that was like an after effect, like finding penicillin."
Which I can't help but wonder if the makers of this movie, the creators of this movie, were doing a very liberal attempt to humanize the people who dropped the bomb on them.
Right.
This Shirazawa character in this movie didn't mean to develop this incredible bomb, but he did.
But he did, and he's afraid.
What is he going to do? And
he's very afraid that if he uses this science to stop
Right.
Godzilla, the
Right.
world powers will then seize it as a weapon to use
Right.
on each other.
Which, if we unpack it one level, Godzilla is the war coming onto their land and destroying them. Flip it around. It's an opportunity for the Japanese to see the war from the perspective of the Americans
What do
who
you do to
developed the
stop-
bomb.
Yeah, what do you do to
Right.
stop this monster that will not give up?
And I don't know if that was the intent of the movie maker, but it definitely
Seeing it in
feels like
hindsight,
it.
with maybe an American point of view,
Yeah.
definitely you can
Yeah.
find that theme in there.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting that modern Japanese don't really hold the bomb against us, and I don't know why they don't.
I actually
but-
have a friend in college who was from Japan.
Yeah.
And I was a theater nerd, and we were building a set for Gypsy, and the set tipped over at one point, and she was painting, and and she dashes back, and it goes slam, everything crashes and falls down, it falls to pieces, and she goes, Hiroshima bomb! And we're all like,
No! You're like-
Mitsuyo, you can't say that! And she's like, you Americans take yourself too seriously. Hiroshima bomb! If it happens again, it'll be Nagasaki! And we just laughed and laughed. But, if any one of us had done it, it would have been not okay.
I definitely think that there
She
is a
grew
line
up
that we
in
couldn't
Japan.
cross
Yeah.
there. But at the same time, hey, if she says it, let's all laugh, man.
But it's funny how a lot of this continues on into their media today. A lot of the Miyazaki movies,
Yeah.
like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and Nausicaa with their anti-war and
What's the one with the animals and stuff? Princess Mononoke.
Yes.
Yeah. That one's amazing and that one has other things. But go on.
So it does carry on over. So it's not just one war event. This is
No.
something that has ingrained itself in
It's
the
a
psyche.
cultural identity, yeah.
And the fact that they can put it into themes of a movie, I think not only, with giant monsters
It's
or
a
cartoon
coping
characters.
mechanism for sure.
Not only is it a coping mechanism, but it's a way for future generations to understand the feeling behind it.
Definitely.
And so I find that very strong.
Yeah.
That they can take this horrible, traumatic devastation,
Loss, really,
and turn it into something emotional that is
Yeah.
easy to
process. Yeah.
and to understand without being there, understand the great feeling of loss that
Yeah.
they went through.
And those themes are definitely present in this movie. In
Yes.
fact, the very opening scene of this movie, we see a fishing boat where, Godzilla's appearance on the horizon ends up...
The Muppet.
Well, no, this is before the Muppet. They don't even show Godzilla until
No,
like
they
the
don't.
40-minute mark in this movie. There's no Muppets. There's no nothing for 40 minutes. It's all just building the set and giving people... In fact, I think
It's very M. Night Shyamalan.
Yes.
Or Hitchcock.
And they also do this with the oxygen destroyer.
Mm-hmm.
The first time that the oxygen destroyer is demonstrated, we don't see it. We just see
Yeah,
how
you see
it
her,
causes
Emiko's reaction.
Yeah, exactly. And so it sets the stage for what is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so this event with the fishing boat getting irradiated by
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla, and it's interesting to me. I always thought that Godzilla was radioactive, but watching this
No,
movie,
it's his breath.
well, no, even his breath is. His
And
breath
his-
is caustic and destroys
Yeah.
things, but I don't think it's radioactive. But they do talk about because the H bomb went off right next to him, all the dirt on him is radioactive. Everything around him is radioactive. Modern Godzilla is a radioactive monster.
Yeah.
He's got to recharge at the nuke station
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yes. Whereas this Godzilla, I don't think he's radioactive. I think that
Well, his
he's
footprints are
survived.
radioactive. Everything around him becomes radioactive. But I
But
think
he
that
survived a
leaving.
radioactive
Yeah.
event. So, yeah, it's not killing him like it would a normal person.
Well, he's not a normal person.
He's not a normal person at all. And the point is that he could survive a nuke. And so what are we going to
that's
step it up
actually-
with?
Yeah, exactly. They do point that out in the movie. They're like, okay, he has survived the H bomb.
Yeah.
Normal war tactics are not going to work.
I'm still
on
surprised
this
that they
guy.
tried depth charges, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
I know.
But,
I was
yeah.
like, with
well, we got to
what?
give it a shot. Oh, it just made him angry. Who could have seen that coming?
But we're seeing this from a modern point of view where we already know what happens. 'Cause
Yeah. Well, and talking about Serizawa, the scientist with the eye patch
Mm-hmm.
who comes up with the oxygen destroyer bomb, he is given an impossible choice in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about this movie is it never answers that impossible
No.
choice with a clear, this is the right choice, this
right.
is the wrong
well, and
choice.
they do the same thing with the love triangle, the plot
Yes.
A. They do the same thing with the love triangle. Does he stay with Emiko, stay engaged to her, marry her, even though
Right.
it was an arranged marriage and
Right.
she's obviously in love with the handsome stranger and the captain of the trawler?
Yeah, he gets two impossible choices to
Yeah.
make. One, what to do with this terrible weapon that I've created. How do I prevent the world from using it for terror and it looks like I won't be able to? And two, how do I show the woman that I love her when showing that I love her means
Letting her
leaving
go.
her? Yeah.
Yeah.
This poor
And-
dude, this poor
Yeah,
guy, man.
He's in a rough spot.
But I think that both of these stories are kind of meant to tell the same story.
They do. And he
different
ends
stakes,
up-
different levels, but
He ends up solving the problem by not solving the problem in both instances.
well, by removing himself,
Yeah.
I suppose.
So he doesn't give up his love. He doesn't give her up. He just removes himself from the
Yeah,
equation.
yeah.
He doesn't give up, his ideals of not using his science to become a weapon of mass destruction by using it once and destroying all evidence,
Right.
including himself.
Now, I will say that is fantastic storytelling.
Yeah.
It is
Oh, I thought it was
absolutely
brilliant.
amazing.
I was watching it again and I was like,
When you get it, and part of the barrier to getting it is the language and the subtitles and things like
And the
that.
guy
When
in the
you
suit.
get it, yeah, but when you get it, it's like, ooh, that's really, really good. Here's the problem. I still don't think they told the story very well. Okay, I'm gonna go on the record right now and say I did not like this
well,
movie.
They were doing the same kind of what they did with King Kong, which is, okay, tell the story, giant monster!
Yes, but I don't even think that they did that well. I did not like this movie. Now, I'm going to say, I don't want to diminish the historical significance of this movie. It's the first kaiju movie in Japan. It set off the first cinematic universe. I mean, people are talking about, the Marvel
The
Cinematic
MCU.
Universe. Forget that. How about the Godzilla? How about the GCU, man? This movie is historically significant. It's absolutely amazing, but I feel it is entirely skippable. Am I going to be hated for saying this?
Oh, I won't hate you. I'll just be sad for your life.
I mean, here's the problem with it. First of all, like I say, the telling of this story, of this love triangle, and the significance of
And
it.
the father of the girl, the whole nine, the paleontologist. And
I think it's significant.
It
that
is.
The plot telling of this on Wikipedia doesn't even mention that part of the story until the third paragraph
I know.
in.
They're too busy talking about the giant monster.
They're too busy talking
But,
about...
he is the titular character.
Not just the titular character, he's the main character. And that's fine, but he doesn't even show up until the 40-minute mark.
And when he does,
Yeah, and when he does, it's a giant Muppet peeking up over the hills going, mana, mana.
First time I saw it, as a child, I thought, oh, look, Kermit the Frog has a mean older brother.
Yeah, and I mean, fortunately, later shots redeemed that because we get to see him stomping around and everything.
I had my goldfish brain and I just forgot about Muppet Man.
But as far as a monster movie goes, not only is this one so-so because they spend so long not showing us the monster, and when the monster shows up, he doesn't do much. But here's the worst part. I've already looked ahead a little bit. Everything in this movie is undone by the later movies. The very next movie is like, yeah, we got another Godzilla already. And then a couple of movies later, they're like, well, we've got another monster to fight. Let's pull out the oxygen destroyer like we've just got it sitting on the shelf. Like everything that this movie does, all of the dramatic tension of this movie is undone by later movies.
When I saw that one with the oxygen destroyer coming back, I thought maybe they reverse engineered it?
Of course they... Listen, in the real world, all we need is somebody getting the idea that something is possible, and they will start down that road again.
Yeah.
Serizawa was right. As soon as the genie is out of the bottle, it cannot go back in. And even just knowing that it exists, a lot of times... it's taken us...
And that's the cautionary tale.
That's the cautionary tale. But, I mean, what's the caution here? Like, just don't do science. Let's all live in huts and be primitive people. Like, we're not going to do that.
I think the cautionary tale is be careful what you do with it.
Yeah. And I think that it's
and
telling...
another one of those, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes. And I think that it's telling that in this world, the world that we live in, the world that has... seen what the nuclear bomb can do, we have not, except for in experimental ways, used that again. We know what it can do. We've seen what it can do, and if we actually are foolish enough to set off another one,
that's why
we know the consequence.
The mutually assured destruction of the 80s worked, because we were like, yeah, I have it too, I have it, me too, I have it.
Yeah.
But at the same
point... There's a song by Tom Lear called Everybody's Got a Bomb.
Yep.
And,
But nobody wanted to use it.
Yeah.
Because no one
Because they knew what the price would be.
They knew what it would be.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's interesting how media has taken that in.
I think, though, that we also need to remember that we are still just one red button away from mutually assured destruction.
Great big red button, which you should never push under any circumstance.
And we've got two world leaders who are button push happy in charge right now. So hey, welcome to the 2000s, 2024. What are we calling this? Anyways, yeah, it's almost, it seems to me like this movie has come around to being significant again because of the world that we're living in now in a different way. I mean, Godzilla is once again looming on the horizon, that monster that the nuclear bomb let out.
It's nature's reaction to man's actions.
Yeah. And this movie, like I said, I didn't like it because I went into it hoping for a kaiju movie. I wanted to see big monsters fighting. I wanted to see a big monster doing cool things.
But
and this
kaiju
movie was
movies have not. You're looking at a standard that when this was made had not
yes,
been set yet.
exactly. And
They were inventing it as they went.
And I am judging it unfairly that way. And this movie was so heavy. The scene where a mother is huddling on the street, holding her 2 children and saying, "We're going to be going where Daddy is soon." I was like, hold up. That's a dude in a giant rubber suit. Come on, can we have some fun here? This movie was not fun.
No, it was
This
never
movie
intended
was
to be.
dire. This movie is not. I'm gonna reiterate my position. This movie is not a kaiju movie. It's a disaster movie. Kaiju movies, yes, evolved later. There was no kaiju movie at the time. This set the standard and what
And the
evolved
reason
later.
why Godzilla, we still think as a kaiju, is because Godzilla itself is a character.
Right. I don't think though that he had much character in this movie.
In this version,
He was just
he
a disaster.
develops a character, but
Yes.
especially as you enter in the other characters like Ghidorah and Mothra and
Right.
those.
Yeah. I think that this original Godzilla movie stands apart from other kaiju movies, stands alone from other kaiju movies because it's not a kaiju movie, it's a disaster movie, but it fueled what followed after
Yeah,
it.
it's like Godzilla is the comet that's going to hit the Earth. What do you do?
Right. And so, again, I wish that I liked it more, but I still think that it's a significant movie.
It is.
It's an important movie.
And
I
they developed what they called suitmation.
Yep.
Rather than claymation or animation, they called it suitmation, where you put a human-sized person inside a rubber suit or two.
And then with miniatures around them,
building
and the
size to
miniaturization,
them to
yeah.
make Godzilla look huge. And then they did the fancy shots where you have and the double exposures.
Double exposures and compositing real people into the scene.
Or you do the forced perspective, a la
This
Lord of the
movie also
Rings.
developed, if I remember, it developed glass paintings,
Mm-hmm.
matte paintings that you would film through. You'd put that matte painting in front of the camera, but you'd have a portion of it where people could be doing stuff. And I think that was developed for this movie. And so, historically significant movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that for certain. I know that that is a technique that they used in Sleeping Beauty. It was the first animated movie they did with that. So, but I don't know if it was the first one, if it was specifically developed for that, or if it was the studio itself had heard of it and developed their own version of it. I don't know.
Possibly that, because first of all, they did do it, but yeah, they didn't have a whole lot of notes to crib at the time.
Not really.
And they did a really good job of it. I was watching it, and after hearing that, I was like, wait a second, where in this movie did they do this? So they did a
great
really good job with
no,
it.
it was well mixed in. It wasn't quite like Godzilla where you're like, oh, there's the theme and there's the so. But at the same point, you're still like, dude in a rubber suit. Can you imagine how hot it would be in that rubber suit?
Oh, that rubber suit.
And you wouldn't be able to hear the director at all, and it would be very tough.
No, but the guys who
props to
moved in
them.
it,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, I do think that this is a significant movie, but it was so heavy. I'm going to say, if you're into watching kaiju movies, you can skip this one. But I don't think that you should skip this one for the historical significance of it.
If you want to set up the world of Godzilla,
not
the modern ones, but what the oxygen destroyer bomb is,
I
what
suppose so.
this is,
They
what
do,
is this?
That was the other thing about
good.
this movie that bugged me, was that all of the gravitas, all of the storytelling, all of the heavy stuff that they put into this movie,
goodbye,
completely undone by the next. In the very next movie, they're like, well, we've got another Godzilla showing up. They don't even try to be like, yes, we destroyed one Godzilla, or they don't even be like, oh, this Godzilla came back to life. No, that Godzilla dead, but there's more Godzillas out there. Oh, great. How many more?
How many?
Just one for now.
How is the Earth sustaining this? What is it eating? And why didn't we see it till the H-bomb showed up? I mean, come on.
Well, that was explained in the movie. They were living underground or something. I don't know. Lost World stuff, Hollow Earth, that doesn't even show up until the modern movie. Let's not go there. But yeah, all of it was undone. Also, again, Shirazawa's sacrifice and his solution to this impossible choice that he's got all of it's undone because the oxygen bomb shows up later. People
Yeah,
figured
exactly.
it out.
It's like, yeah, okay. So
But again, that's
he's this heroic, sacrificial. I'm going to give up my life and my love
to stop the
to
monster.
stop the monster, so everyone else can live in peace. But then the monster, that is the science that is created from this, will also die with me.
Yeah.
And then
And
never
then
mind.
But that is very real world, though. In the
It
real
really
world, once we figure out that something can be done, we walk towards it. There was a guy who ran a 4-minute mile. The first guy who ran a 4-minute mile went through so much harsh training. People were saying it wasn't possible. He was determined it would. He figured it out. He ran a 4-minute mile, and then we had like the next year 20 more people running 4-minute miles because they knew it was possible. And so I definitely think that if we had an oxygen destroyer, I think maybe what Surazawa's biggest problem was is he shouldn't have called it an oxygen destroyer. He should have called it like the Twinkie bomb or something that would just give them no idea which direction to start searching, you know?
Sorry. Oh, that took me by surprise.
Twinkies are going to kill us all. That's true.
I don't know. I'll never grow old. I have so many preservatives in me
Yeah,
from
that's right.
Twinkies. That's why Gen Xers aren't aging. We've
And
got
that's
those
all the
preservatives.
scientists are sitting there unwrapping Hostess going, we have to find the secret of this. So yeah, once people know what's going to happen, it's in there. And that is kind of the theme of the movie.
Yeah.
The atomic bomb was in the world and it unleashed a monster. And that monster was the nuclear age. And that's what Godzilla was. Well, the oxygen destroyer is going to be
So
knowing that it's there is enough.
As a child, you thought, okay, Godzilla is the nuke. No, the oxygen destroyer is the nuke.
Yes.
And yes, Godzilla, like World War II, was this major monster that we needed to stop so that more people would not die. But now that it's out in the world and the knowledge is out there, I mean, you can Google search it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we hadn't had Google back then, but
no, you can once it's figured out,
once
it
it's
remains
it's
figured
there.
out because people
The
know
world
it will
has
happen.
changed forever.
Yeah,
Surazawa makes an impassioned speech about it.
it's a wonderful
I
speech.
never
even
meant
dubbed.
to do that, even dubbed. But I never meant to do this. I was just
I was exploring
following
the
my
science.
curiosity, and what I found was terrible, and I don't know what to do with it.
Well, like when he shows it to Emiko,
Yeah.
and he's like, "This is what I can do," and she's so upset by it.
Yeah.
she can't even speak.
Yeah.
And she has to turn around, and she just leaves and doesn't even mention it.
Well, and
until
part of that was the
movie.
storytelling of the movie.
Yeah.
The director, he wants to set the stage before we see the thing.
Well, yeah.
We don't see Godzilla until the 40-minute mark, but we see his destruction, that tornado that rips
Oh,
through
yeah,
the
the
village,
sunken
and he comes out
ships
and
and
he
the-
sees it, but we don't see it.
Yeah.
And she sees the oxygen destroyer,
we don't.
we don't see it. And then when it's revealed, we can go, oh,
That really is that bad.
Here's the thing. This plays into my previous point, because I don't think that tells the story very well. Because what I came up with in my head was so much worse than when they finally revealed it in both cases, that I was like, oh, it's just giant
Yes,
Muppet on
but-
hill. Oh, it's just a bunch of fish
But
bones
you
in
are
a,
modern person looking back at it.
That is true. I do wonder how this hit in its day. But me watching it now, it was just another thing where I was like, get to the monster, please.
Meanwhile, I saw it
I am
as a
here
child.
for monster fight. Want to see, please.
I saw it as a child, and it made enough of an impression that I actually remember watching it as a child.
Yeah.
And laughing at the funny dubs. But I also remember thinking that I really loved the characters, and actually, the scientist was my favorite character.
You know what?
And he's not that sympathetic of a character.
No, he's not. But at the same time, he is. He's caught in this love
Yeah,
triangle.
he's in this-
caught in this impossible choice of it. And I'll tell you the
And
truth.
my mom was like, "Really? He blows himself up?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. 'Cause
He
he's willing to
removes
do it."
himself from the equation in both cases. It's a solution, but it's tragic.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely.
mom
I
was
think
like something.
Surazawa.
The handsome stranger, aka the ship captain, he went on, other love interest. He went on to be, the bee's knees. He was the Cary Grant,
he was the Brad Pitt of his day at the time. I just realized something. The love interest falls in love with the ship captain. Wait, no, in King Kong, he was the first mate. Still, they got a thing for sailors. Both of them.
But at least she doesn't stand at the rail just waiting to be captured by the local natives.
No, I will say that Emiko is a full-fledged character in this movie.
She's not just the damsel in distress.
She's not just a damsel in distress, and I really kind of appreciate that for her. But I think that we've covered pretty good. Normally, I would like to go through the plot step by step.
But this one, there was a lot more subtext to be discussed.
Definitely. And the other thing is, looking at the plot that I've pulled up on Wikipedia, it spends 2 paragraphs talking about what people do to fight Godzilla, and there are a lot of scenes of people
depth charges,
sitting around and going, "We need to talk about this, and the truth is the truth," and all of those scenes where it's just people talking,
trying to get the information on it.
Yeah, and then in the 3rd paragraph of the plot, they finally talk about Emiko and Suruzawa and the ship captain. Man, I can't even remember. Otaga? Apparently
and
that's
her
his
dad,
name.
the paleontologist, is the first one to be like, okay, this is the kind of monster it is.
Well, I also like his take on it is like, we should study it.
Not blow it up.
If we study it, people will die. Again, it's another one of those impossible decisions. But yeah, the plot synopsis doesn't even get to the A plot until the 3rd paragraph.
Her father was like, there is so much to learn. He survived the H-bomb. Not once, but over and over and over, because he's from the Bikini Atoll.
Yeah.
Or underwater of the Bikini Atoll. And he's like, we need to study this because then we can know how to survive.
Well, he survived it, exactly, yeah.
And meanwhile, everyone else is like, well, while you're studying it, we're all dying.
Exactly. It's another one of those really tough, and it never answers that with here's the right and here's the wrong answer to it. It just leaves it for the audience. It's so heavy, and I love it for being heavy, but
when you're out there to watch a giant monster destroy Shinjuku or Tokyo,
it's
or
one of those
Island.
movies that I feel like people should watch once. But if you want to turn off your brain and have fun watching monsters smash each other, well, we got some more of those that we're going to look at in the upcoming weeks.
Wait till we add some more monsters where Godzilla can be the hero again.
Exactly. So I think that we're going to wrap it up there. Overall, let's talk about rankings. We only have 2 of them right now, but if you were to put, and this is comparing apples and oranges.
Totally.
I guess that my question is, do you prefer apples or oranges? Would you put King Kong above Godzilla or Godzilla above King Kong?
As a kaiju movie?
Yeah, well, this is the kaiju review, so
okay.
Well,
King
if
Kong
you want
is
to do
better
otherwise,
kaiju
justify
movie.
it.
King Kong is a better kaiju movie.
Yes.
There is more to King Kong as a character. There's more reasoning for it.
Mm-hmm. And they get to the giant monkey in record time, lickety-split.
Yeah, and they still do ridiculous things, like the only reason why the woman is in the movie is so you have someone to rescue.
Yeah, it has a lot to love, and there are things about Godzilla that they did better, I will admit, yeah.
But as an overall movie, they're totally different.
Yeah. I am entirely willing to put King Kong as my number 1 and Godzilla as my number 2. And quite frankly, I foresee Godzilla slipping right down the list. Again, I don't want to dismiss this movie. I don't want to say it's not significant.
Lot of historical significance.
But it's not going to be my favorite on this list.
There was a lot of forced perspective that they learned. There was a lot of miniature.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of pioneer technology. Absolutely wonderful movie. Just not my favorite. And it's not going to be my favorite.
Because it's subjective.
It is. It is an absolutely subjective list. And feel free to disagree with me. That's fine. But for now, my list is King Kong number 1, Godzilla number 2, and Godzilla is just waiting to slip down because next week we are probably going to be reviewing. No, not probably. We are going to be reviewing Godzilla Raids Again, the second Godzilla movie, which was released
the Godzilla we just happened to find.
Right, yeah, the second, the brand new Godzilla, fresh out of the can.
Now that you've rebuilt Shinjuku, let me smash it again.
Exactly. And this movie was released just 1 year later, so it's safe to say that we are now in the point of them just monopolizing on the
They
genre.
just
We are building a genre here.
Reused a lot of sets, reused a lot of suits.
Absolutely.
Because it was already made. Why
it
do
was
it again?
already made. Let's just make some more. People like that first one. Let's make some more money. And I tell you the truth, I'm kind of looking forward to this one because it's going to change the dynamic.
It moves more into the kaiju.
It's definitely moving more towards what we consider kaiju.
Less be careful what you wish for, anti-war, and more into the kaiju.
Right. And again, that stuff isn't bad. I
No,
do
it's not
like
at
it
all.
when we can have a movie that entertains us and gives us something solid to think about. But
Pray for the Fireflies, which is another one you can only watch once.
Oh yeah, no. I have literally not finished watching that movie.
Oof.
I have seen the beginning.
Oof.
I have seen the end. I have seen the middle, but I have not seen it all at once.
No,
I cannot take it.
I ranked that one along with Schindler's List. It's an amazing movie you can only watch
Yes.
once.
Well, and like I mentioned earlier, Life is Beautiful. That's one that I do
It's a
go back to
beautiful movie.
every once in a
Beautiful
while because
movie.
at least the first half ropes you in and makes you fall in love and makes you so happy. And then
Dun,
the second
dun,
half
dun.
repeatedly kicks
Smash
you in
you.
tender parts. But it's I don't mind when a movie entertains but also makes you think. And this movie, I think, was very heavy on the making you think and not heavy enough on the entertaining. But we'll see as these movies go on. Maybe they're going to stop making us think. And
Me smash.
Exactly.
Me have radiation. Ha!
do we want that? Are we going to... I'm looking forward to finding maybe a hidden gem in here because honestly, a lot of these movies I haven't watched. But I think we should leave it there for
Yep, I'm a
Godzilla.
nerd. All right.
So that's it for this episode of Shelf Examination. I'm Joe.
And I'm Sarah.
And we are inviting you to do some shelf examination of your own at your
Local
local library.
library.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.